Welcome back again, guys, to another Steam Deck video, and in this video we're going to be talking about the hardware limits of the Steam Deck. Is it slowly becoming obsolete? We know it is, because every bit of hardware becomes obsolete at some point, but we're starting to see that point now where games cannot hit 30 FPS, even with FSR 2.0, even with the settings cranked down to low. We're getting to that point where games are starting to come out now that obviously push the Steam Deck a little bit too hard, and we're unable to hold at least 30 FPS. And as you know, 30 FPS, in my opinion, is the bare minimum for frame rate in any game. 40 is better. The Steam Deck can do 40 in some games, and obviously 60 and beyond is the gold standard. And we're starting to get to that point now where games are coming out and we can't run at we can't hit that 30 FPS. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the article from Tom's Hardware discussing this, and I'd love to know your opinions in the video, the comment section down below. Anyways, guys, let's get into it. But before we do, please like, subscribe, click the bell icon for more Steam Deck content on your YouTube homepage every single day. And go check my link in the video description of all my favorite Steam Deck accessories. It's a great curated list with a bunch of stuff you may like, and I'm always adding stuff to it, so bookmark it. Anyways, guys, let's get into it. So as I said at the start of the video, the article comes from tomshardware.com. Steam Deck is reaching its limits, and games like Plague Tale, Requiem, games are becoming too demanding for the Deck's little Van Gogh APU. Now, the reason this article came about was because Oliver Mackenzie over at Eurogamer posted a question, or basically tested some of the latest, most challenging games for the Steam Deck, right? Can Steam Deck handle a range of PC's most challenging games? A Plague Tale, Requiem, Gotham Knights, The Witcher 3, Next Gen, and more tested. And we're going to be talking about that in this very video. And I want to hear your opinion and your thoughts in the comments, because I know you guys are good for it. I know you guys give some good thought-provoking comments, and I enjoy reading them, every single one of them. Anyways, let's get into it. So as we said, Oliver Mackenzie, Digital Foundry, published an article discussing the capabilities of Valve Steam Deck in the latest AAA titles that were launched last year. In particular, he wanted to see whether or not the Steam Deck could deliver a solid 30 FPS gaming experience, which, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, is a bare minimum. Even if you have to turn the settings down to low, turn on FSR upscaling, all that sort of stuff, if you can hit 30 FPS consistently and solidly, then it's a win in my book, okay? So obviously some games, competitive games, obviously favor faster, higher frame rates, but 30 as a bare minimum for story games, RPG, stuff like that, I think it's the bare minimum in any game. We're going to get into it. So to refresh your memory, the Steam Deck is equipped with a Zen 2 quad-core CPU that boosts up to 3.5 GHz, RDNA 2 iGPU, equipped with 8 CUs and running up to 1.6 GHz. The APU is certainly not a strong chip by today's standards, but in the Steam Deck's application, it has proved to be a surprisingly adequate gaming APU, as our review highlights. Plague Tale Requiem showed impressive results on the Steam Deck. Mackenzie was able to hit solid 30 FPS gaming experience with just a couple of minor dips in more demanding areas. This was accomplished with the resolution optimizer in performance mode and all visual settings set to low, with the exception of textures that were set to medium settings. Despite running on low settings, the graphics hold up well, being equivalent to an Xbox Series S. However, since the game is upscaling from an internal resolution lower than 720p, pixel popping and fizzling are definitely problematic. The Callisto Protocol, as we know, came out last year, and a lot of people were super excited for it, including me. It's very much like Dead Space, right? It launched and it had bugs across the board for all consoles, all platforms, not just Steam Deck. So I think it'd be a little bit wishful thinking to think this would get like a solid 30 or above, right, on the Steam Deck. Although it can, and it can run higher than that. I've seen it on YouTube, but it does dip quite a bit, right? So Mackenzie was able to use a mix of low and medium settings to perform favorably against current and last generation Xbox consoles. However, frame rates proved to be an issue due to CPU bottlenecking issues that saw FPS drop into the low 20s sporadically. Now, next up was obviously Gotham Knights. They tested Gotham Knights. They've had FSR2 in performance mode. Everything's set to low visual quality settings, and they're saying Gotham Knights was constantly dipping below 30 FPS in the open world area. And again, this is probably due to the CPU bottlenecking, which I think is... I've actually had more issue with the GPU bottlenecking in a lot of these games, not so much the CPU. But that's interesting. However, when fighting enemies in an interior space, the game picks it back up to a perfectly smooth 30 FPS. And then Need for Speed Unbound, I'm gonna, like, before even reading this, I'm gonna say Need for Speed Unbound has to have hit 30 FPS. I mean, racing games are usually not super intensive, but let's see. Need for Speed Unbound, the only racing title that was tested by Mackenzie, the game ran surprisingly well, hitting a mostly solid 30 FPS with medium quality settings at a resolution of 720p or 800p and DRS target of 30Hz. But hitching is still somewhat problematic in this title, according to Mackenzie, with the game also being a CPU bottlenecked in certain areas. Racing games, the last thing you want is it to be stuttering below 30 during high intensity races, right? Need for Speed Unbound is probably more of an arcade game, so that's probably not too big a deal. But if I was playing something like F1 2022 or Forza, I'd definitely be feeling that a lot more, you know. On a more positive note, The Witcher 3 Complete Edition shows a different story, with the game holding a solid 30 FPS in almost all areas. Graphical settings used were a mix of medium and high settings at native resolution 800p with TAAU enabled. Uncharted 4, the final game Mackenzie tested, this game ran the smoothest of all, hitting a solid 30 FPS, but this shouldn't be too surprising considering the game was originally made in 2016, only being released to PC later last year. Mackenzie used the medium graphical preset for this title in combination with the FSR2 upscaler in quality mode to hit his 30 FPS target. Awesome. As Mackenzie learned, the Steam Deck's hardware is definitely showing its limits in these graphically demanding PC titles. Almost all games tested required the use of a resolution upscaler at an already low native resolution of 1280 by 800, making image quality borderline playable in some cases. CPU bottlenecking was also problematic in most titles and was the sole reason for some games not hitting a comfortable 30 FPS. I've also experienced this, guys, with Elden Ring. Elden Ring can sometimes dip in the 20s. There's no way you're going to get 60 FPS from Elden Ring. So that was one of the games that I played first on my Steam Deck and was a little bit disappointed with. But, you know, if you're happy playing around 30 with occasional dips, you know, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. That said, the Steam Deck is still pulling off a playable gameplay experience where it seemingly shouldn't. The hardware requirements for most of these titles absolutely dwarf what the Steam Deck's hardware actually possesses, yet somehow the console is still able to run these games with a gameplay experience rivaling last-gen consoles. It's hard to tell when the Steam Deck will no longer be able to play most graphically demanding games the PC platform has to offer, but based on Mackenzie's findings, it could be soon. And that doesn't bode well for the company's claim that a next-gen device won't be focused on performance upgrades. Now, we spoke about this in a previous video about how the Valve team are working on a new Steam Deck, but they're going to go the Nintendo route. They're going to be focusing on improving other aspects of the device, not so much performance. So they're hoping to improve the screen. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get an OLED. They're going to be improving, or trying to improve, the battery life by maybe introducing a more updated, optimized APU. And obviously, maybe improving the device, the screen to body ratio, all that sort of stuff. They're not too focused on hardware improvements. Now, that's one of my biggest gripes with Nintendo, and I'm a little bit bummed that they're going down the Nintendo route, is the performance, right? The Switch came out, God, back in 2017. We're like 5 years, 2016 to 2017. We're like 7 years, almost a decade, having had the Switch, right? And it's still not received any notable hardware upgrade. It's struggling to play most games at this point. And it's just a shame, because I was really looking forward to a new upgrade for the Steam Deck in terms of performance, because we're seeing other handhelds come out now, like the Neo 2, all right, the Neo Slide later this year. The GPD Win 4 that have more powerful APUs in them. The Ryzen 7800U, 6800, 70, I think it was 7800U, that obviously allows you to run at higher TDPs and get much better performance, up to 50% in some cases, better performance, or more. So I was really hoping that the Valve would go down a similar route and upgrade to a newer AMD APU. I know it's a custom APU to begin with. I was kind of hoping they would upgrade it for the next system. But I think what Valve's thinking is that they're going to make a solid sort of foundation for the Steam Deck, so developers know how to optimize, like how to handle the Steam Deck, how to develop games to optimize for the Steam Deck. If they're constantly adding hardware upgrades year after year, obviously developers are not going to know how to optimize for that one specific device, because it's always changing. It's like a PC, right? But I don't think that's it. In my opinion, it's not too big a deal. I think, look at PC games, right? Look at PCs, gaming PCs. They're always coming out with new GPUs for them, right? And performance only ever gets better with the hardware upgrade. I've never seen a game, like, I've never seen someone play a game with a 3080, get like 100 FPS, upgrade to a 4090 the year after, and then see the performance jump from, dip from like 100 to like 60 because the developer hasn't had time to optimize it for the new hardware. It just doesn't happen, or it very rarely does happen. So I think that's a little bit of a cop-out excuse for them, their reasoning behind not maybe upgrading the hardware. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Game developers are beginning to switch to next generation game engines such as Unreal Engine 5, dropping the last generation console support in the process. This will undoubtedly make future AAA titles substantially harder to run on the Steam Deck's Zen 2 APU. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wait a couple of years before we get a new upgrade for the Steam Deck in terms of hardware, a hardware upgrade, allowing it to play more powerful games, which is a little bit sad. I think it's going to be like the iPhone release schedule, right? Where one year we get the main new release, the next year it gets the device gets optimized a little bit, and then the second year after, obviously, they bring a more substantial hardware upgrade, kind of like the iPhone 5 and then 5S, 6 and then 6S, that sort of upgrade cycle. You know, every year after they release like a slightly improved version, and it means we're probably gonna have to wait a couple of years before we get a new Steam Deck. But let's see what someone in Plain in the Sky says in the comments. He says, the reason I never liked Steam Deck is the fact it was built around graphical performance. The Steam Deck is a bulky, big, heavy, noisy, and has poor battery life. When I want a handheld, I want long battery life, low weight and portability, well, low weight and increased portability, no noise or loud fans. Love my Switch. Downvote the Steam Deck. Now, the Switch, the performance of the Switch is a little bit crap, and also it's meant for kids, right? It's meant to be light. It's meant to be light. It's meant to be portable. The Steam Deck's geared towards PC gamers. They're putting a next level APU in it, for a handheld device, that is, and obviously adding the touch pads and adding the back buttons and all that sort of stuff, putting analog triggers and stuff, and making it ergonomic so you could play long sessions on it. All right, it's kind of got a different design philosophy. I wouldn't say they designed it to be big, bulky, heavy. It's not really heavy. It's barely, it's, in my opinion, it's not that much heavier than the Switch. It's just bulkier. And I think, like I says, the reason they made it bulkier is to put a bigger battery in, is to add an NVMe SSD that's upgradable, right? They designed it with like upgradability and repairability in mind, whereas the Steam Deck wasn't so much designed around that. Someone says you're absolutely right. Portability and long battery life are top priorities for a handheld device. As for performance, the main goal is efficiency and to maintain a fanless design and a great battery life. Dense, efficient, and low-frequency cores are the way to go for this application. The Steam Deck is a wonderful device for people like me who wants to play the library of old games from Steam. I'm not into the newest game available. That's true. I do have a massive backlog that I need to get through, and I do love the fact that I can do that on the Steam Deck. I returned my deck for exactly these reasons. I could see real quick, while totally awesome, July 22nd, it wouldn't age well for new games. Sadly, I look like I made the right call for now. I want a handheld portable PC experience, but one that will last a good 3 to 4 years before going belly up, I'm guessing, on new AAA games. Until Valve or another pulls this off, my Switch will have to make do for now. The Switch doesn't play new AAA games either. What are you talking about, dude? the Switch doesn't have Callisto Protocol. The Switch doesn't have any of the new games, honestly, besides their own exclusives, right? So I don't get that argument. I don't know why he'd be like, "Well, I'm gonna go back to my Switch because I want to be able to play AAA games for 3 to 4 years." What's someone else saying? It's not built around graphical performance, it's built around utility. Just because it has better graphical performance as a byproduct to help it do its job doesn't mean that's what it's built for. It's clearly built for being able to use it however you want, as a handheld, a computer, an emulator, and those are just the ways I've used it. The Switch can't have that utility based on its lack of graphical output. It's the limiting factor. The Switch is purely a real portable gaming is purely for real portable gaming. While I still think it's mediocre for being a portable device alongside the Steam Deck, sorry, it's no comparison to older portable Nintendo devices and lacks in any form of utility. You're missing the entire point of the Steam Deck if you think it's for taking with you on the go like the Switch. You don't buy a Steam Deck for that. They're for taking your PC games to bed or the couch without having to sit at your computer all day. Somewhere comfortable. You can take it on the go, but as you said, who wants to carry something this size around? Still more comfortable to hold than the Switch, though. It's extremely convenient in that regard. I can play thousands of games wherever I want. The fan is also not that loud at all. That's simply never been an issue. I'm lucky if I can hear it at all, unless it's silent in my room and I have the sound all the way down, which I never do during gaming. Well, you may have a faulty device because that's simply not true. Well, some of the Steam Decks did have a noisy fan, and a lot of people had to send them back into Valve to get them repaired or swap the fan themselves. So that's not technically true. It was a little bit noisy. At least some of them were. Battery life was, of course, a major issue if you're playing AAA games on anything graphically intensive, but we're still in the first iteration of the handheld. Did we forget the battery woes of the first generation Switch? It was awful as well. In fact, it was the same as the Steam Deck and offered zero of the pros other than being lighter and smaller. 2.5 to 6 hours. I can easily get 6 or so hours with the Steam Deck, not fantastic, but if I stay away from AAA gaming, the battery life is satisfactory comparable to most laptops. And you can obviously hook it up to a battery, right? Both handhelds have their ups and downs. Sure, as an adult that doesn't need to game on the go anymore, never does that opportunity present itself. He's basically saying he's a hermit. The Switch does absolutely nothing for me anymore, not when I can play my Switch games more reliably on a different console, which is just ludicrous. I can't play all my Switch games on the Steam Deck. I've tried a couple of Switch games on the Steam Deck, and performance isn't that great. At least, not for the newer Switch games. So yeah, I wouldn't say that the Steam Deck plays all Switch games better than the Switch, because that's just not true. Then Valve was... so he's responding... Nolanor is responding to the guy that said... you're missing the entire point of the Steam. You're missing the entire point of the Steam Deck if you think it's for taking with you on the go like the Switch. Then Nolanor says, then Valve was missing the entire point of giving the Steam Deck its form factor, and so did you when you bought it. If you didn't buy a Steam Deck for taking it with you on the go, then you should have bought a desktop instead. It would have offered you significantly more utility and power for less money. You clearly like your deck, and that's perfectly fine, but please don't avert your eyes from reality. If you feel like you made a mistake buying a deck, feel free to admit it. Pretending it's a good device despite being bad at what it was designed for, just because it's good at what it wasn't designed for, is called a sunk cost fallacy. Dun dun dun. Well, this guy's got a point. I want to play all games available at 1080p, 60 FPS, 4 hours on end. Anyways, guys, that's a little bit of a feisty topic. Let me know what you think in the comments. I've went on for 17 minutes reading people's comments here. Let me know what you think in the comments. Does the Steam Deck need a hardware upgrade? Is it running low on gas when it comes to just playing new AAA games? Is it hitting that limit now? Hitting that brick ceiling? Let me know in the comments. And let me know what you think about some of those comments, because they're kind of funny. Anyways, guys, have a great day. Please like, subscribe, click the bell icon for more Steam Deck content on your YouTube homepage every single day, and I'll see you in the next one. And check out my link of accessories for the Steam Deck down below. Take care. Bye.